and welcome to today's webinar entitled How to Write Technical Social Copy. This session is part of a special series of educational webinars to help you prepare for tomorrow. Please visit our website at teamlewis.com for recordings of previous webinars and to sign up for future sessions. My name is Nancy, and I will be the moderator for today's event. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items regarding today's presentation. This is a live presentation through Zoom, so you may experience a slight delay as we click between slides. Our presentation will last approximately 30 minutes with some time for questions at the end. We'll have a recording of today's webinar available in a few days, and we'll send everyone an email with a link to the recording. All attendees will be automatically muted during today's event to cut down on any background noise, but we do welcome your questions. Please submit your questions via the Q&A button found in your taskbar, and we will address as many as we can, time permitting. We will end the presentation with a question and answer session. Also, you can follow the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag IAT and by following us at Team Lewis Global. A little bit about Lewis and who we are. We are a global integrated communications agency, and we are the largest employee-owned agency in our sector. We provide full PR, marketing, and digital services with 29 offices across the globe. You can find out more by visiting us at teamlewis.com. Now I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers. Joining us today, we have from the Lewis Pulse content team, Amber Kaplan, Director of Digital Content, Hannah Brozek, Senior Content Strategist, and Dustin McManus, Copywriter. The content team at Lewis works with clients to help tell their brand stories. They work closely with both our digital and PR teams to develop overarching messages that can be translated across multiple channels and mediums. The team takes a three-pronged approach to content production and storytelling. That includes being integrated, data-driven, and social first. And with that, I pass the presentation over to our content team.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We are going to go over just the basics around writing social copy, best practices from different social platforms, tailoring social copy for different strategies, and how to make very technical material pop on social. And then we'll end with a Q&A. So without further ado, we'll get started.
All right, let's start with some social copy 101. We all don't want to spend hours writing a post and get 0 likes. It's frustrating, it's a waste of time. So we can avoid that by following some tips. First and foremost, you need to know your audience. In order to have a genuine conversation with that audience, you have to understand them. Are they B2B? Are they B2C? Who are you talking to? And tailor your communication style to that person. Let the assets inform the tone. The way you talk about a fun wrap-up event blog versus a very insightful ebook or something like that, that's going to be really different from how you talk about one another. So read through the assets, understand their objectives, and then write accordingly. Curb your self-promotional enthusiasm. We all don't want to hear about me, me, me. We want to talk about our audience, talk what matters to them. Say you're going to learn something from this. We want to help you. We're going to assist you, not just saying our brand, our brand, our brand. You're going to lose interest and it's going to feel disingenuous. Summarize, then drive. It's really important to read through the whole asset, like we said, and then get the crux of the argument. There's one point that all of these assets are genuinely trying to make. So summarize that, maybe 1 to 2 sentences will accomplish that in social, and then drive action. Make people want to learn more and explore the asset itself. Remember, less is more. This is social media we're talking about here. People are here to get quippy insights. They're not here to read verbose statements. So, the shorter, the better. Use active voice. That kind of dovetails into abide by grammar rules in general. Check your spelling, check your grammar, don't make punctuation errors. Your brand will lose credibility if you do. And there's lots of easy tools to use online to double check your work. Tailor your approach based on platform. The way you talk about something on Twitter is going to be really different the way you talk about something on Facebook or LinkedIn. Make sure you're not just copying and pasting the same social copy. It's lazy and it's not valuable. Twitter is going to be quippier, more insightful, versus Facebook's going to be fun and a little bit longer. And Amber will get into kind of the more platform basics in another slide. Include a call to action, which we abbreviate to CTA. That can be see more, get the details. Again, it's just driving action, making people really want to click. And then, of course, use the tools in the social media sandbox. If you're leveraging a third-party article, always tag an author. Use trending hashtags to engage in conversation on Twitter. That's also videos, emojis, GIFs, whatever it is, just to spice up your post.
As Hannah alluded to, when you're writing social copy across platforms, you can't just copy and paste. There are just a lot of nuances, and so we put together this chart to help explain that. What you say and how you say it is really going to depend on your company's strategy for each platform, but in general, you can use this cheat sheet as a guideline for what to post, to whom, and where. So we've broken it down into audience, use case, character count, syntax, and creative canvas. We think those are really the main differences you want to be aware of when you're writing a whole bunch of copy. So in audiences and use cases, each platform is really different, and it happens to collect different audiences, and you want to use them for different reasons, and that's a good thing. So for example, Twitter is really good for developers, engaging in B2B copy. Maybe if you want to share breaking news, that's a really great spot for it. Versus LinkedIn is really good for professionals, executives, maybe marketers, enterprise, tech decision makers. Those are all a really good place to go for, and they're looking for content around that stuff. And then Instagram, is really more oriented toward B2C or e-commerce companies, but sometimes tech companies can use it to showcase the people behind the product. So again, it really goes back to what your strategy is. Character count really varies on all of these. The biggest thing we want you to walk away from, though, is the shorter the better. It doesn't matter what channel you're on. If you can just make it quippy and fun and quick and to the point, you're going to be much better off. That said, all of them have different possibilities, and we recommend keeping Twitter really short, and you can go a little bit longer in Facebook and LinkedIn, for example, because you want to do more storytelling there. The other thing you want to pay attention to is syntax. This is another reason why you can't just copy and paste. They're different. For example, Google Plus uses the plus versus other ones use an @ symbol. Some of them you can use hashtags on, some of them you can't. So really be aware of that when you're going to write on your different platforms. And then the last part is the most fun part. It's the creative canvas and the capabilities there. So you really want to use the tools that you're provided with. For example, Twitter and Facebook, you can do polls, you can share GIFs, and those can really enliven your content. So you want to make sure to use those when you can. Most of them can showcase video, and that's a really good tool to have in your toolkit as well. There's also a difference in how you are going to author copy if you're doing paid versus organic. Now, if you know you're going to have a paid program, then you're definitely going to want to pay attention to this. The first thing is that the way you use the two are very different. So on paid and promoted content, the focus is really going to be on awareness or probably lead generation and sales, versus on organic content, most people's strategy is around engagement or community building. So that's automatically going to change the way that you present material. The second, and that kind of ladders into those, is the voice and tone. So on a promoted piece of content, you're going to be a lot more promotional, you can be more direct or maybe even corporate, and you're going to include a clear CTA like download now or learn more. Versus on organic content, you can be a little more conversational or natural. You can definitely still include clear CTAs, but it's not necessary. There are some other subtle differences we wanted to call your attention to as well. If you know in advance that you're going to be promoting content, don't include hashtags or handles. You really just want people to focus on your CTA, and you don't want them to click anywhere else. Versus in organic content, you can use as many of those as possible. You want to be a part of that conversation. You want people to click around. You want them to be engaged.
Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through some basic best practices for writing social copy, and we've taken a broad picture look at some of the specific platform differences as well as the nuances between paid and organic, let's go ahead and take a look at what you might be promoting actually on your social channels. And then for a lot of B2B and technical companies, you're going to be promoting assets like a blog. So here's an example of a blog that our team contributed to one of our clients, and we wanted to just highlight and pull out some of the nuggets that helped us inform how we approach publishing this throughout social platforms. So this blog in particular was about protecting data and tying that into corporate social responsibility. And the first thing we did was try to tie it into a newsworthy element. So at the time, this was written right before the big cybersecurity RSA conference this year. So that was kind of our newsworthy hook. Then we went down and offered just a little bit of background about the event, what it is, who attends, and why it's important. And then we kind of got into the meat of it, which was kind of like our aha moment and our hot take, the kind of scan that we took and the different approach that we wanted to stand out on when we wrote this blog. And those are really good elements that can help you promote on social and make your content stand out. And then at the bottom, these are just some other ways that you can go about promoting an asset. We offered a little bit of research about corporate social responsibility. We tied it into consumers' feelings around the time about their private data being exposed. This happened right around the time of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. And then finally, we offered a plot twist, to just kind of get people interested and want them to read on and make more. So this is an example of a Twitter poll that we crafted. We wanted to make something short, sweet, and to the point on Twitter, and we found that polls really work well. So we posed a simple question around, what do you want to see from companies when it comes to protecting your data? We offered several options for people to choose from. We incorporated an emoji that go along with each to just give it a fun visual flair and pop. And then, as you can see, it ended up garnering almost 1,700 votes. It's, a really effective way to get people engaged in a simple, efficient manner without necessarily, needing them to respond. So we found that this tends to work well. And then for Facebook, we wanted to strike that same engaging tone that we did on Twitter, but, tie it back into more of that like B2B element. So, we created a graphic to give it that visual flair the same way we used emojis. We really went in and honed in on, why CSR is important, kept it kind of light, but also, giving that like clear message that, people need to like look out for this. And then this is kind of a myth that I feel like people have around hashtags on Facebook. Normally you don't see them a lot. It's more like a Twitter, Instagram thing, but hashtags can work. And for example, this was also tied into RSA. That was the event hashtag. And it's really helpful to just tie your content into a greater conversation that might miss it by employing that. So, don't always think that hashtags are just relegated to Twitter. If it makes sense for the post at the time, go ahead and use it on Facebook. And then finally for LinkedIn, we wanted to look at the audience. As Amber mentioned, the audience for LinkedIn is more, companies and business-minded folks. So we included a biz-friendly CTA. We tailored it more to organizations and companies who need to be mindful about CSR. And then we kept it a little bit more knowledgeable. We dropped a little bit of information about RSA, like what it means for data, especially in this day and age, and why it's important to protect it.
Okay, now for the fun part. Here are some storytelling tips for you because that's really the easiest way to make technical copy engaging. And that's because people are people and everyone likes a good story. The easiest way to tell a good story is to pull an overarching narrative out of the technical concept. So you want to think about what void this product fills, how it's better in society or making lives easier, and just kind of what the broader cultural implications are. When you can do that, it's a lot more relatable. Speaking of relatable, you want to make it human, and you never want to underestimate the value of good storytelling to help people feel empathy or understand a product. And then the last really great tip is to just work to simplify a concept so that they're more accessible. Offer, just enough background and detail, and then hit them with the hook. It's a really tried and true and tested way of hooking people. There's also, 4 really great benchmarks for storytelling if you want to get a little more granular, and you should always take these 4 tips with you. Unique. You want to think outside the box, consider technical concepts from a fresh angle to make them pop. Unusual or oddity. Is there anything strange or weird or fun that you could grab people's attention with? If you can, then definitely use that angle. Emotion. Is there an emotional element that can be tapped into? So, for example, cybersecurity can tap into people's fears or insecurities about privacy. And that's another way to be a really great storyteller. And then the last tip is wonder. Tech, more than anything, can truly inspire people's imaginations. So try captivating your audience with the futurism of tech.
And so once you really carve out that narrative and know the exact story it is that you want to tell and on what platform will best, suit it and tell that story, and then you can kind of get fun. So we've already kind of covered off on these, but adding any visual element that you can to a post will really help make it stand out. That includes everything from emojis to photos and GIFs and memes. And particularly, I think we're seeing nowadays, video and multimedia are really taking a strong stance and captivating people a lot on social media. A lot of people, really gravitate towards that sort of content. So if it makes sense and you have those capabilities, definitely feel free to use those. And then also, just in terms of remembering that social media is a conversation and it is in dialogue, you want to try to be conversational and incorporate jargon or folksy language. So that can include anything from utilizing common figures of speech or well-known cultural references that people will recognize and pick up on, and that can really break up the technical heady concepts that might appear in your social posts. Overall, I think it's a good idea if you want to, and you can be playful, but without entering into cliche, and having fun with your tone so you can really stand out among a really crowded tech landscape. And then as within being conversational, we've shown examples of, posing questions and running polls. I think with a lot of technical concepts, you're trying to educate your audience. So you want to talk to them as equals, don't talk down to them, but really if you have something to offer and some knowledge you want to impart, definitely do that in an approachable way. And then finally, just engage your audience as you would an individual, talk to them, not down to them. I think that's a really important key tenet to making really technical content be more approachable and engageable on social media.
Okay, now let's do a few case studies examples that we've seen with a few of our clients of just social copy that's really worked. Starting off, here's an example asset from McAfee, one of our longstanding clients. So this was a report called Winning the Game. It's about the cybersecurity skills shortage, which a few of you may be familiar with, but it is pretty nuanced and unique to the cybersecurity industry. But it had this unique angle of how they wanted to tap into the gaming community and how the skills of gamers make relevant skills for cybersecurity defenders. So we kind of saw that angle and ran with it. An example tweet that we did, so we kind of came up with this GIF. It's obviously a screen grab here, but it's this kind of guy going through obstacles like a game, which just made it really pop and engaging on social. So if you'll see within the copy, we made a relevant cultural reference. Ready Player One, the movie, was coming out right around this time, so it was perfectly timed. Then the second sentence, just summing up the crux of that argument: talented gamers can make a career out of cybersecurity. Trending hashtag, always relevant for that industry that we use. And then CTA, here's how. Then for our Facebook post for this asset, again, that fun gift played really well. The copy itself, happy employees, secure networks, that sounds like this fun little tagline. It's pretty engaging. It's still quick, but because you can be a little bit longer on Facebook, the next sentence, our latest report, explores the correlation. You can be a bit more specific, but still fun and lighthearted on Facebook. And then for LinkedIn, this is this more business audience. You want to be more insightful. So there's a link between gaming and cybersecurity that's offering some new insight that this report is going to lead to. So therefore, we did second sentence of learn how experienced gamers can help close this talent shortage, just appealing to those business-minded folks.
And so here's another example from one of our long-standing clients, VMware. And we decided to include this one because, kind of the whole crux of this presentation has been, how do we make technical content on social media really pop and make it accessible? But sometimes, based on brand guidelines and tone, you can't get as playful or fun as you want. And then it also goes back to what it is that the audience of that particular, brand or company is craving. And that goes all the way back to like that first point that we mentioned on Social Copy 101, is to know your audience. So with this particular one, this is a really technical minded audience and they crave that technical content. So this is just a blog announcing a new update to a popular software. And so the way we wanted to go about promoting that on Twitter is to just kind of take a very like straight to the point approach. We utilize a hashtag for that software, which is followed very vigorously on Twitter specifically. We announced that it was arriving, and then, they made a basic CTA leading back to the blog so they could check out all the new features and upgrades. It's not the most riveting tweet in the world, but it definitely got the engagement from that audience because we knew it was the technical content that they kind of wanted to see. And you'll pretty much see the same thing from the Facebook post, because we had a little bit more leeway. We added in some more initial information about, how this new announcement around Kubernetes makes it more stable and causes production deployments to increase. And then again, tailored it a bit more to a B2B business-minded approach. And then again, ended with the CTA to go through the blog and find out all that they wanted to know about the software.
Great. Thank you so much, Amber, Hannah, and Dustin. Now we'll take some time and go ahead for some questions. Just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to submit your questions by clicking the Q&A button in the taskbar below. And let's see, we have a few questions coming in right now. So the first question here, in your guys' opinion, is there a secret formula to creating a strong call to action?
I think you always want to make sure it's relevant to the asset you're promoting. You can use some that you fall back on, but sometimes they're not always applicable. So say it's a detailed report with lots of insights, I would say get the insights here. You want to make sure it's still relevant to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
You always have the standards too. Download now, learn more. I mean, those ones are tried and true and tested and they work. So
yeah.
And I think social media really lends itself to experimentation. So try new things, see what sticks. You always kind of want to have like an analytic mind, and like you want to be noticing how those posts are performing. So if you find that one is resonating with your audience more than the other, then stick with that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Another question here is, what do you do when the words used to describe your product are really long and kind of boring?
I think we always say be accurate first. Obviously, you want to be quippy and quick on social, but you want to make sure you are accurately reflecting the product or the service, whatever it is. And I think you have to work with what you got. Once you have the full sentence there, maybe make your CTA shorter and just work around it, but always be accurate first.
Yeah. Another question here. Do you recommend posting the same post multiple times versus once?
No, that's actually what we don't recommend. I think it kind of comes off as a little lazy and uninspired. I think it can be difficult, especially if you're promoting the same asset multiple times, to try to make it new and fresh each time. But hopefully, some of the tips that we laid out in this presentation have really kind of sparked like an idea factory, and you can like kind of pull different elements from that asset and then hone in on one of those for each post rather than just recycling the same copy over and over again.
Yeah, so to recap, it's okay to use the same asset, but just make sure you're taking a different angle, speaking to a different audience, mixing it up a little bit.
And what are some helpful tools you use to organize your content strategies and ideas?
Ooh, good question.
I mean, if we're thinking bigger content strategy, I think just starting from a holistic perspective, you can use, if you're working just in a basic like Excel sheet and just mapping content as it goes down, you can look about how it's going to go week over week. From there, I think there's online analytics tools that help you refine. You can look at what type of content is landing within each audience and your target audience. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think you can also hone in on, there are a lot of trending staples that you find across social media platforms. So I'm thinking like Monday motivation or Throwback Thursdays. You can tap into those and then find assets that fit in those and then utilize those hashtags. And that's not only keeping the content fresh and relevant, but it's potentially getting it in front of newer audience that maybe follows those hashtags but doesn't specifically follow your handle.
Another trick you might consider is thinking about evergreen content versus kind of live content. So you have your staples, say you want to promote 2 case studies and 1 white paper every week, plus all your blogs. And then you can also use social media to kind of tap into the zeitgeist of the moment or whatever people are talking about as well. So,
do you guys have any guidelines of best times to post, or have you found that that's no longer relevant with social media algorithms?
I'd say that kind of dovetails into knowing your audience too. Sometimes developers are up late at night, or do you have a big pull in India? It goes back in knowing your audience first and timing it with that. Maybe you do have more success posting late at night versus in the morning. I think kind of the classic rule of thumb is getting stuff out so East Coast and West Coast can start seeing it, so cadencing it from 5 a.m. PST. Then you also want to continuously space it out, so 5, 8, 12, however that looks like. I think that's sort of the basic rule of thumb.
And I think to just add on to that, I always like to think of it as like, well, when do I check social media? Like, what are the busiest or the biggest times that I do it? And I think like on my commute or in my during my lunch break. So that those are like peak moments where a lot of people are not necessarily like tuned into like working or busy, and they're kind of like relaxing on their own and a little bit checked out, but they're always like plugged in. So if you can tap into those, I think also like scheduling content around those times can help potentially get it in front of like a wider audience.
What's one of the biggest mistakes you've seen someone do with social copy?
I think just going back to, I know we had a question about reusing the same copy over and over again. I think that's kind of like a no-no. You don't want to do that. It makes you look a little lazy and uninspired. And then also just really, not taking into account what's trending at the time. You kind of always want to be mindful of like what's going on, and then making sure that you're not like stepping on toes or being insensitive or doing something that might cause a backlash. It can be a lot, I know, especially in today's news cycle where there's so much going on, but just really keeping an eye on like what's trending and what's happening, and making sure that if you do chime into those conversations, it's organic and it makes sense for your brand. And if it doesn't, then steer clear.
Another one is, do you recommend using reposting a previous post with the "in case you missed it" content language around that?
I don't know about a previous post as much of like, are they saying, if they're saying the new previous social post, I think you can do the same asset again, and that's a unique angle you can take on it. I don't know about the same social post though.
Yeah, I agree. I think always you want to keep it fresh.
Another question here, I'm going to try to summarize it as best as I can. So it's around tone of voice. With technical social copy, it's often directed towards engineers and kind of like more serious audience. And some of the examples you guys shared here, it's kind of more playful, a lot more excitement with like exclamation points. Is this oftentimes part of the brand style guide, or do you A/B test different tones of voices?
Yeah, I think, we included those last examples that we included from our VMware client. They were kind of much more drier than some of the examples that we included. And that all went into like, we knew the audience, it was very full of developers and people who utilize that kind of software and open source code and those types of things. And you're right, they really do respond to that kind of tone. So at the end of the day, I think it's like, if you know what it is that your audience wants and you know kind of how they walk the walk and talk the talk, that's what you should be tailoring your strategy to, and that's how you should be creating your voice and tone and really crafting that content.
But to add to that, I would say a lot of people forget that developers are people too, and developers and people both really like stories and like to laugh, and so don't discount being funny, but also don't try too hard.
We have a lot of video content. Do you have any tips on best ways to present this on social?
I would say natively where possible. Usually we see an uptick in likes and things like that. I think mostly because the platforms prefer that. And so they prioritize showing that to people. But in general, video across all the way always use it, especially if it's high quality.
What's some of the best brands that are currently on Twitter right now that you guys follow?
We all have some personal favorites. I'll start. Mine is SoulCycle. I think it's honestly, their strategy is impressive. They're totally community focused because they know that's what their audience wants and that's the purpose of the exercise. But they're constantly retweeting, liking, engaging, posting customer stories, customer videos. And so it really just shows that they are showing the love to their audience. So I think it's why they're successful.
I really like MoonPie. I think MoonPie is hilarious. They're really good at tapping into cultural moments, and I think there's a lot of lessons we can take away from a consumer brand like that, especially in B2B tech. I think it's still possible to be funny and to really tap into what's happening, especially on social media, and to have a personalized stance on it.
And personally, I don't even follow this handle, but it pops up so much because they are so good at kind of tapping into that zeitgeist, is Wendy's. I think they just do an amazing job of, pretty much like Amber said with the MoonPie example, of like finding the cultural hum of the moment and then subverting it. Like, I don't even eat at Wendy's. Like I said, I don't follow it, but I see it. And I think there are a lot of like great lessons and takeaways that especially more tech-oriented handles or like channels can learn and kind of tweak and manipulate to fit their strategy and their tone. So I would never discount like these more fun, popular consumer brands. I would see what you can learn from them and then integrate what you can that makes sense for you from what they do.
And one more, how do you guys stay fresh and innovative writing such technical copy?
I think what Dustin said, always find new angles. You can say if it's a product launch, or you don't want to say product launch 5 times in a row, but there's always nuances within each piece of content, or maybe there's a specific feature you want to highlight, maybe there's a specific insight. So keep looking for those angles, and of course tap into the toolbox. Use GIFs, use emojis, use polls. You can keep it fresh that way. What else?
Oh, I think those are really good tips. Also, you can always just kind of spitball a whole bunch of ideas and kind of see internally what sticks or what resonates with people before you publish stuff. So that's another way to kind of at least gauge, what might work and what won't work internally. And I know that's not exactly what you asked, but it's, it's an offshoot of that.
Yeah, and I think just finally a couple points. I know we've kind of touched on these already, but look at what's trending at the time. If there's something that makes sense and you can weave that in, definitely include it because that'll always offer a fresh new angle. And then, kind of carve out different potential audience segments for a given asset or something that you want to promote. So then you can tailor the copy based on that given audience and try a more targeted approach to reaching a specific audience rather than kind of like your whole compassed follower count.
Awesome, thanks guys. It looks like that's all the time we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually. On the screen here, you'll see the content team's contact info. Please feel free to reach out to them directly with any questions you may have. Also, we have a few more webinars coming up in this series. To learn more, please visit our events page on our website, teamlewis.com. Thank you all very much for joining our session today. As mentioned at the start of this webinar, we will be sending everyone an email with a link to the recording of the presentation. And thanks again. We hope to see you next time.